given, I mean, you've done so many different kinds of shows. So what really drew you to Arrow?
I would say a couple things. I'm a fan of the comic book. I felt like it worked nicely for a TV show in that, he was actually a guy who was really a crusader for the little man, and so I thought that worked well week to week. I felt like the origin story of the character of being this castaway was something that you could actually, if you were to do the film version of it, you wouldn't be able to tell it over 5 years. The ability to go back to that island and tell the sort of making of this character was really interesting to me. And so those things were probably the most interesting.
And are you trying to balance how much you guys want to bring to it that hasn't been seen before with all the various source materials there are? Is it difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the challenge of this show is that it's a lot of moving pieces. It's a vigilante story. It is there is kind of a larger kind of family mystery kind of story. There's the island story of what made this, hero into the man that he is. And as part of the vigilante story is probably the most where obviously some of the lesser known and more iconic DC characters kind of filter in. And so I think we do that pretty successfully over the first 5 or 6, and I think people will be interested and intrigued by that.
I mean, there does seem to be kind of a core component. There is, kind of the romance or the tainted romance between him and Laurel.
Yes,
there's a family, there's the vigilante, and there's also the flashbacks. So are there going to be episodes that focus much more on one aspect, or are you trying to balance them?
Over the first 6 or 7, we always play with the recipe of the series. You try ones that are more balanced in this direction or that direction, and then you sort of see what works best. And just like the audience discovers that. So my hope is, again, the audience watches and you kind of get that response of oh, everybody really liked episode 5, they didn't like episode 3 as much, or 3 didn't turn out as good, but 2 was great, and so you kind of figure it out that way. But yeah, we do play with that balance.
But is there a little bit of relief right now to be in your own bubble and not have to deal with audience feedback yet?
There's a little bit. It's always easier when you get to the audience. It actually is, because you're making the show for an audience. You're not. It's not a book or a journal. So it is. The audience feedback is it's really critical. We're actually premiering this show later than I'm used to premiering shows.
Yeah.
And so I'm used to the audience feedback coming when we're in the middle of it. We're making episode 5 or 6 of something, and it'll be later than that. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects the process.